Hello and welcome to the Minds on the Frontline Podcast. I'm your host, Jeff Lassers. I am a firefighter, paramedic, educator, and content creator. My co-host today is Mike Mattern, a firefighter, paramedic, EMS instructor, and peer support team leader. Today's episode explores the connection between nutrition, mental health, and resilience among first responders. Our guest today is Megan Lautz, a registered dietitian, certified strength and conditioning specialist, and tactical strength coach who works with fire, EMS, law enforcement, and corrections. Through her company, Rescue RD, she helps frontline workers handle the real challenges of shift work, stress, and demanding schedules with practical, judgment-free strategies. In this conversation, Megan discusses how nutrition impacts mental health, why traditional advice doesn't fit the lifestyle of most first responders, and simple, realistic steps that anyone can take to eat better. Minds on the Frontline is brought to you by the Frontline Strong Together 5 program. If you or someone you know is struggling, the FST5 program provides 24/7 live support through our website at fst5.org or by calling 1-833-34-STRONG. Together, we can break stigma, offer hope, and strengthen Michigan's frontline community. For more information about FST5, including free resources and ways to connect, please check out the episode description and follow us on social media. Thank you and enjoy the show. Good morning, Megan. How are you?
I'm good. Thanks for having me.
Well, thank you for joining us in the Minds on the Frontline podcast. Go ahead and introduce yourself, who you are, what you do, and where you do it.
Sure. So I'm a civilian registered dietitian specializing in first responders. I currently work full-time, again, as a civilian dietitian for a large department just outside of DC. We have about 1,600 firefighters, 1,400 sworn officers. And I've been working for relatively large departments in the DC area since 2017, so about 8 years now. So I am a civilian dietitian. I've never been a first responder. I'm not married to a first responder, but my job is not to just preach nutrition and tell you to eat your vegetables all day, but actually to teach you how to apply it in shift work. So basically translating the textbook nutrition information you'll find on the internet and putting it into that shift work language where I'm tired and cranky and I don't feel like eating a vegetable kind of thing.
I love that, like proper fuel, hydration, and rest. And you're here to
All
translate it to Mike and I's cousins of the 5 disciplines in the first responder community, which is not easy. You know, we classically don't eat or hydrate well.
No.
In fact, if you didn't come back with at least a gallon of ice cream every shift, if you were cooking at my fire station when I was a young man, you were sent back.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
You were, yeah.
Do not pass go directly back to the store. Yeah. You're going to jail.
Absolutely. So, one thing I want to touch on before we get into the meat and the potatoes of this, pun intended, is that it is pretty uncommon from my experience to have a full-time registered dietitian available to the communities of first responder agencies. And if I have heard of it, I kind of feel it's been on the West Coast, but you're on the other side of the country where it's not always that progressive with nutrition and stuff like that for first responders. So is it a nuanced thing in your area, or is this a growing thing?
I would say like we have more strength coaches or like mental health providers in this area. Like there is an emphasis on health and wellness in most of the departments, I'd argue, in the DC area. Not all of them though, but not dietitians. So I'm one of I think 3 in the country who work full-time for a department embedded that I'm aware of, though it is slowly starting to grow. I think the challenge is dietitians tend to be a very stick in the mud personality. Like they can't curse, can't throw back like the weird jokes and stuff that you guys like to throw at us. And they can't be flexible with their recommendations. So it is a tough personality find, I will say.
It kind of sounds like she's describing the need to be culturally competent before you try to administer any advice or therapy.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that doesn't come without failing a lot and saying the wrong thing and still, messing things up a lot. But yes, cultural competency is super important. Again, being a civilian, I've never been a first responder. I'm not married to a first responder. Like I've done CPAT, I've passed CPAT, I've done 24-hour shifts before I really started making a lot of recommendations because I didn't feel like I could make recommendations if they weren't going to fit the job. Like it just seemed like a mismatch to me.
And that's huge that you took the time to actually dive in there and get a good idea of what we do, how our shifts work, what physically we have to do, because there's a lot of people that don't take the time. And I think that's what has made you one of the leaders in this area for doing that. Why is it so difficult for first responders to eat healthy? And why don't typical nutritional advice kind of apply to us?
Yeah, I mean, so I would say like the nutrition concepts apply to you all, but it's like, the language is in this like very 9 to 5 language. You're going home, you're eating dinner with your family, never eat past 8 p.m. You're running like what, 3 toe-pain calls after midnight? Like it doesn't even make sense. So a lot of these recommendations, like first responders hear them, they try to stick to them, it doesn't work. And then they get frustrated and they keep going through these cycles of on a plan, off a plan, on a plan, because it never actually fits their lifestyle. So what I like to say is that like anybody who's ever been a coach, a dietitian, a trainer, for the general public, it's really hard to get humans to change in general. But for first responders, you guys are starting off at a lower foundation. So what I mean by that is the exposure to trauma, sleep deprivation, and the high stress jobs make it a lot harder to make changes because you're exhausted. Your willpower is like in the negatives, when you start the day off. And then on top of that, the expectation to perform is also higher than the general population. You're supposed to perform 110% mentally and physically at every single call. So the gap to wellness is like double, in my opinion, relative to the general population, the 9 to 5 population. So what this means is before we even can talk about like the sprinkles on the cupcake, right? And the sprinkles on the cupcake is like the supplements, the edge. And departments want me to come out and talk about the edge, the performance, like the little niche bits of nutrition. And I'm like, well, that doesn't mean jack diddly squat until I actually talk about the foundation. How are we going to change the lifestyle? How are we going to eat when everything's on fire, everything sucks, and I haven't made it to the grocery store in 2 weeks because I kept getting held over and then had my kids' sports practices when I wasn't held over, kind of thing.
Yeah.
Now, with that, you talked about shift work, and we all work very odd shifts, 24-hour, 48, 12s, midnight shifts. What are some of the biggest misconceptions that you've heard about eating healthy in that kind of shift-based environment?
Yeah, I think it's like, well, like I said, the never eat after 8 p.m. kind of thing, like that. You should never be eating when it's nighttime. Well, the reality is if you work a midnight shift, that's when you're awake. You're probably going to need to eat. And then also what a lot of people will do is they'll skip meals or they'll try intermittent fasting or something crazy and then not eat. And then it impacts their energy levels. And what do first responders reach for when their energy levels go to crap? Energy drinks, sugar, so it actually makes it harder for them to see improvements in performance mentally and physically because they're actually not fueling their bodies. So a lot of my recommendations have come from the same problems because I've done thousands of one-on-ones with first responders, and it's the same problems pretty much across the board, regardless, fire, police, sheriffs, corrections. It's, I don't have time, I don't have energy. And sometimes subjectively, I don't have money for wellness.
So what would you say your top 3 tips then for the shift worker when it comes to eating better during, those odd times, right? 24 hours, midnight shifts, whatever. What are your top 3 kind of recommendations for those people?
Sure. So I'll kind of go with like so what I like to call these is the first 3 rungs on my ladder. So when I talk about the ladder, a lot of times you'll see health professionals come out to first responders and tell them, just go vegan, just eat 1 meal a day for a 24-hour shift. Like, I'm not saying that like these things can't work and have worked for individuals, but how many first responders do you really think want to go vegan?
No, well,
No.
we actually have
there's always one.
people to work with. No, we have anywhere from 2 full-time, and then we'll get a couple part-time vegans. Every once in a while, they'll hop on the train.
It's a great diet, but here's the thing. It only works if you want to follow it.
Right. And they're healthy individuals who are athletic and they're minding their vitamins and they're living. These are balanced lifestyle type people to begin with.
But they have an interest in it. And this is what a lot of people miss when it comes to certain diets for the first responders, or why can't this person just suck it up and eat healthy, And the reality is there are first responders who one of their special interests is nutrition, is fitness. But there are a lot of first responders who are in the whole mentally potentially physically, there's a lot going on in their personal life and they have no interest in nutrition. It's not a hot topic for them. So they're not going to be jumping through all these different types of hoops and that kind of stuff. But there are still ways. So like coming back to what are the 3 top tips with this ladder, like I said, there's a lot of professionals asking people, first responders, to get to a 2nd story window without a ladder. So what are the first 3 rungs to get you those stepping stones to get you closer to that wellness? And then if the room flashes over, AKA your life just catches on fire, the kid's sick, you're picking up extra overtime, you're also doing a side job. When you slide back down the rungs, you actually have backups. So backups are like your struggle meals. So I like to call it a struggle meal because we all have those times where we want to eat healthier, we want to meal prep, but just stuff gets in the way. So what are the backups? So the backup number 1 is go bags. So a go bag is just essentially a snack bag, a diaper bag for yourself, if you will, where it's full of, and when I say full, you have like 5 to 10 different options for snacks, not one crusty protein bar smashed at the bottom of a pit kit. Okay.
No, totally.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
so I like some of the protein bars that are out there, but are you saying just protein bar? Because they're nice because you can grab a box of them or whatever and chuck them in a bag, whereas I don't have to make anything. It's non-perishable. Well, it's perishable, but it's certainly going to hold up a lot longer.
Sure. So when I say non-perishable, usually it lasts 3 to 6 months without requiring refrigeration. You can, of course, put like fresh fruit and change it out. But I also know a lot of people where the apple takes a field trip to work like 3 shifts in a row and then just is rolling around the back of the engine. So what are some non-perishable things that we pack? So applesauce pouches, non-perishable, great pre-workout snack. And it doesn't bother people's stomachs if they do it before or during workouts. Smoothie pouches, tuna packets, chicken packets, beef jerky, or whatever type of jerky that you like. Whole grain cereals. So like a bag of Cheerios, a bag of mini wheats, pretzels. I don't hate an Uncrustable if you eat it pre-workout. Like there's a couple different things that we can pack in that go bag. And a lot of people are like, well, Megan, if I pack these snacks, I'll eat them. I'll eat more calories. And yes, but you also have to think about on a 24-hour shift, on a 12-hour shift, you're moving more than the average person. A lot of my even busy medics, especially in the DC area, they're getting 15, 20, 25,000 steps without really trying. And for me, like 10,000 steps, I've got to take an extra hour walk that day. So they're getting a lot of ambient activity throughout the day running calls. So number 1, those snacks fuel you during those calls. Number 2, how many times have you guys held over on a call for like 3 hours and it's 3 hours into lunchtime and you get back to the station and you eat everything that is not tied down?
Mm-hmm.
So it actually helps with portion control. Everybody freaks out about these dinner portions for the firefighters, how they eat 3-4 plates of dinner. Part of the reason sometimes that you're eating 3-4 plates of dinner is because lunch was at like 11 or noon. And then you had all these calls get in the way. You put a paper towel over your meal 3 times and now it's 9 p.m. Of course, you're going to eat 3 plates of it. You're starving. You didn't have any backup snacks. So that's what the go back does.
I like that. This is really good advice. Let me ask you, is this really good advice for some of our emergency departments when they stock snacks for EMS? Because I'll tell you what, I've seen a huge evolution of going from only having donuts and bagels and whatever in there to cashews, almonds, beef jerky, and that's awesome. But, sometimes there's a little pop in there and some sugary stuff. But, a Lorna Doone or 2 ain't going to kill you.
It's not. And listen, everybody thinks I'm just like this food police, so canteens in our area or like rehab units, sometimes they'll have a Rice Krispie. And depending on when you're using it, like a Rice Krispie, not only does it slap, I'm sure during a fire suppression related call, but it's actually continuing fueling. You're getting the carbs you need to continue pushing at a level that, again, the 9 to 5 is never going to do in their lifetime, except for maybe when I do yard work and it's 80 degrees out and 100% humidity in Maryland. So right. You're allowed to have some of these treats and fun things in your diet. In fact, it's actually better, I would argue, because when you tell a first responder they can never have pizza again, what do you think they want the most?
Pizza.
Yeah.
Yes. It's not just first responders. It's me too. I used to do bodybuilding. And if you told me when I wasn't allowed to have certain foods, when I finally had it, I would binge to the point of discomfort. And I'm professional. So
Right.
It actually creates like a mental health concern, kind of, sort of, for some people, especially that type A, really rigid personality. So having a mix of foods is important, not only for sustainability, but also it can be a fueling tactic depending on what types of calls you're running.
So how can somebody plan to make better choices for their meals, not just their snacks? Because snacks, I get it, like you end up consuming so many calories with a little snack here, a little snack there. So it's good to have a high quality snack, but at some point we got to have a real meal. And so tell us what that's got to look like to kind of avoid those worst days.
Yeah. So like I said, the snacks can help with the meal portions, and can help with bridging the gap between meals. But the meals piece, so like, what are the struggle meals? So the struggle meals I like to categorize as like your healthier frozen meals and healthier fast food. So all the time I get from some really health conscious firefighter or first responder, why are you recommending fast food, frozen food? Well, guess what? We're looking at a better bad decision here, people, because what are you going to get when you roll up to the Chick-fil-A when it's like 3 hours past lunchtime? Not a salad, So having a list of things that are going to be those better choices that you can try to choose literally in your phone 80% of the time, you're going to do a lot better than before where you're just kind of winging it. And I've gotten a lot of firefighters to lose like 20 pounds on just better fast food choices. So you actually meet the person where they're at and where they feel like they have control, and then kind of keep pushing them forward. So in terms of better frozen or better fast food, we are looking for a protein and a plant at each meal. So this is the easiest way for me to simplify the two biggest gaps in first responder food choices, which I would say, okay, yeah, protein's not really a gap for first responders. You guys aren't scared of protein, but it's going to be important for muscle gain and maintenance. So, chicken, fish, seafood, kind of ideally, dairy, eggs. Those are going to be our main choices, ideally. Sometimes some, red meat in there for razzle dazzle. And then the plant is going to be things that are higher in fiber, which will keep you full. So fruit or a vegetable, again, it can be fresh, canned, or frozen. So that's kind of what we're looking to structure out. So if we go to Chick-fil-A, so maybe you get the grilled chicken sandwich sometimes, the grilled nugget sometimes. Maybe you do still get the French fry, but get a fruit cup to eat later. So like, it's okay to make two decisions at once. I want something like a little treat, but I also want to balance it out so that I'm full and I'm not hungry again in an hour or two.
So does that help avoid the big binge? Because at some point, if you don't plan for that and you don't know what to expect, because you're like, well, I just won't eat fast food. Like, we're going to have to eat food. And if you don't have an idea of what you're going to order before you get there, you're going to order the left side of the menu, like all of it.
Yes.
And in some cases, even binge. So is this a way to avoid both of those things?
So binge eating, and disordered eating is a spectrum, right? So there are many firefighters that I've worked with who actually fall pretty far on that spectrum, like in the disordered eating, potentially even really need to get some help with it. But they're a lot of times in denial about that kind of stuff.
I can't believe how many unhealthy relationships with food I've seen in first responders. It's unbelievable. Sure.
And it's crazy. Like, you ever notice after a bad run, where does everybody go?
Oh my God. And
everybody goes to the kitchen and starts eating. You know what I mean? Like, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
We had one guy who was like he would not eat all day. He'd have like one of these shakes, whatever was cool 10, 15 years ago. And then whatever, right? But we'd catch him in the kitchen.
In the kitchen.
We would leave out plates of cookies to test his will. And it'd be like a deer in the headlights.
Oh, like, somebody set up a trail cam in the refrigerator for one of those guys, and they caught him. Same deals. They caught him on the trail cam at like 2 a.m. Yeah.
So is that what you're talking about?
Unhinged. You know what? I'm not terribly smart, but yes. So what a lot of times, again, so I see a lot of like really health conscious first responders who want to help other first responders, and they do it by shaming them. Like, you signed up for this. You need to be fit and you need to make healthy decisions or you're going to die of cancer and heart disease. And they're not entirely wrong. Okay. Like, I get that. But we have tons of evidence to support that shaming people actually makes things worse. And guess what shaming often leads people to do? Binge eat. Right. So I think, number one, it helps to work with a dietitian or even potentially a therapist to discuss food-related behaviors. So a lot of my first responders I also have noticed they've come from adverse childhood experiences. So they have some trauma from the childhood that could be related to food. Maybe they had that almond mom who told them they could only have like celery and called them fat and like all those kinds of things. So they restrict and binge on food that way. Or they had like 5 and 6 brothers and sisters. So they inhale as much food as they possibly can because they don't know if they're going to get more food. So food insecurity can be a problem. So some of this stuff is actually deep rooted. It's not like, oh, I didn't really eat that much today, and then I got really hungry and ate too much later. It could be some deep rooted stuff that I am not qualified to talk about, but the stuff I'm qualified to talk about. So to prevent binge eating, number one, we want to restrict that, like, this food is good, this food is bad. I'm not allowed to have this, but I can have this. This is healthy, this is not healthy. And like sometimes we need some of those labels to kind of describe what to eat a little more of and what to eat a little less of. But what I'm trying to say is, again, telling the first responder they can never have pizza again doesn't usually go well. So we're trying to eat more of those, yes, I'm allowed to have a piece of pizza, but I want to try to not eat like 18 slices of it. Allowing yourself to have what you're craving in the moment, but then rounding it out with some better choices. And then number 2 is making sure we don't get to a point of hunger that like there's a point of no return, which is where the go bag comes in. Maybe even a snack before dinner. So a lot of people will try to wait to eat before dinner. Then of course that call pops off right before you're about to take a bite. It's okay to have like an apple or a salad or the salad first or some veggies or something like that. I know it doesn't sound sexy or fun, but that actually also helps with portion control. And then if you do get that call right before dinner, you had something.
Now, you just mentioned working with a dietitian, but you also said maybe a therapist as well. And it all kind of works together. And so tell me a little bit, what role does a mental health provider or even a sleep specialist play when it comes to like improving your eating habits?
Sure. So you and here's the thing, working with one of the above can help you zoom out on your life, look to see what is the biggest problem. Because sometimes nutrition is the biggest problem and something that we can work on first. Other times, if your mental health is absolutely you're going through it, you are hitting rock bottom or you're pretty damn close to hitting it, me coming in and telling you to change your entire diet is not going to help. Yes. Are there nutrients that can help with mental health and reduce depression and reduce anxiety? Yes. But guess what you don't want to eat when you're depressed?
Anything healthy.
Yeah. Anything vegetables. Like I just find it interesting when you read all these papers and articles about nutrition for mental health. They're not like talking about the other side of the coin, how no one wants to eat those things when they're sad.
You said meet them where they're at, right? You can't meet them on this like, well, of course, if you only ate this much carbohydrates, this much. But yeah, it's not a medical process here in the sense of you can just prescribe a protocol. Because these are people struggling with, it feels like, their emotions, their thoughts, their themselves, which you're seeing the symptom of the eating choices rather than the reason they're feeling bad.
And it's very similar to like substance use.
That's what I mean.
That's what I mean. It all instead of drugs, alcohol, they're using food.
Right.
And you can't cut food out.
Yes.
You can't cut food out like you can cut alcohol out. So it becomes very difficult for people who especially are in the recovery phases from like drugs, alcohol, or what have you. So yeah, and same thing with sleep. If your sleep is garbage, it's going to impact your food choices. One night of bad sleep leads to a 24% increase in hunger due to a change in hunger hormones. So we see a 28% increase in ghrelin, the I'm hungry hormone, and an 18% decrease in leptin, the I'm full hormone. So you wake up the next day wanting essentially brunch, right? Salty foods, sweet foods, fatty foods. And that's one night of bad sleep. So a lot of times what first responders don't realize, I'm actually catching a lot of 28 to 32-year-olds with sleep disorders. So, and I'm not saying I'm catching them by like giving them a sleep study. I send them to go get a sleep study done and like major obstructive sleep apnea at like 32 years old. And this was a healthy weight individual who worked out, ate pretty decent, but felt like garbage, had really strong sugar cravings, and couldn't get the last bit of fat that he wanted to get off. And once he got on the CPAP, not only did he have more energy, but he lost 2% body fat in a month. And at 32. So I think a lot of people think, oh, I'm going to have a sleep disorder when I'm like, no offense, 40, 50. And it's actually popping up a lot younger because think about it. A lot of people by the time they're in their 30s, 5, 7, 10 years working shift work, It impacts stuff.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, our dorm sounds like an ICU with all the CPAPs that are going off. I mean, no joke. It sounds like all of us are on a vent, but it is. It's a life-changing, like everybody who gets the CPAP will tell you it's life-changing. You never realize how bad your sleep was or how bad you felt until you got one.
Did you feel that your hunger was different after you resolved your sleep issue?
100%. Absolutely.
Yep.
Absolutely.
So again, if I had just told you, well, just restrict your calories and we didn't fix the sleep apnea, it would have made it so much harder for you. The willpower, the limited willpower you had would already be even more limited, So we've got to fix the main issue. And sometimes working with a dietitian will figure that out. But the other challenge is then if you work with a dietitian out in the general population, they're not thinking about the significant mental health concerns, the significant sleep deprivation. Like they don't pick up on that as fast as someone who kind of specializes.
Well, let's talk about that because the top 3 things that first responders, across the board, they'll tell you anxiety, depression, PTSD. Across the board, it's always the highest prevalence in our community. How does nutrition affect those symptoms once you have them?
Yeah. So most first responders fall in that like standard American diet kind of classification for how their eating patterns are. So a lot of red meat, a lot of fast foods, a lot of fried foods, a lot of sweets, a lot of sugar sweetened beverages, whether that's energy drinks or, sodas, that kind of stuff. So and not a ton of fruits and vegetables, not a ton of lean proteins or whole grains, fiber, etc. So when we actually shift people over to the Mediterranean diet, there's a significant, I can't remember it off the top of my head. I want to say it might've been like about 60% for some of the studies, reduction in depressive and anxiety related symptoms. When they shifted from that Western diet towards more of a Mediterranean style diet, which is higher in fruits and veggies, whole grains, beans and legumes, a little bit of poultry, chicken, and like 1 sweet a week, which personally, I am not capable of eating 1 sweet a week. Like I can do 1 sweet a day, but 1 sweet a week, you're pushing it. So, you don't have to be, what I'm saying by saying that is like, everybody thinks a dietitian's perfect, and only eats vegetables and kale and stuff like that. And, the reality is I can't even, perfect the Mediterranean diet. So just because you can't do perfect doesn't mean we can't get you 80% of the way there.
Are there any specific foods or nutrients that can support mental health? There's studies out there about like giving vitamins to certain, inmates within the correctional facilities and it decreasing their violent behavior, right? So that is an impact on mental health. So, what foods out there do you recommend that'll help support our resilience of our emotions and our mental health?
Yeah. So interestingly enough, fiber has an impact. So fiber is found in fruits, veggies, and whole grains. Carb containing foods, which of course is the first thing any firefighter over the age of 40 cuts when they want to try and lose fat, is go low carb. The fiber is the biggest gap because again, no one wants a salad when lunch was delayed by 3 hours. So the fruits and the veggies are the things that we're really focusing on adding in. And sometimes that's dried fruit, things like the little That's It bars. I don't know if you've seen those. It's just dried fruit mashed up into a bar. Applesauce pouches, fruit cups. So I had when I had my daughter, they gave me the Dole fruit cups with like mandarin oranges and like grape juice. And that slaps. Like I kept buying pineapples and they would just die on my counter because I was like, I'm going to cut this pineapple. Did not cut the pineapple. So, sometimes you have those backups. The non-perishable backups can be very helpful to get that fiber in. But fiber helps keep you full. So it can counteract that sleep deprivation by adding bulk to the stomach. So you're more full between meals for longer. It also helps with blood glucose management, cholesterol management, but fiber also, when it gets digested in your gut by the little gut bacteria, it releases a short-chain fatty acid called butyrate, which can travel up the gut to the brain, which can help promote or improve mental health. So it's a really kind of crazy thought process that that's even a thing because fiber doesn't seem like something that would directly impact the brain in and of itself, but fiber can help with that. Now, the other side of things, like I said, fruits, veggies they're high in fiber, but they're also high in antioxidants, which can help with cognition and brain health. Blueberries specifically, I believe a cup of blueberries eaten daily prior to some big exams improves test scores. So anytime I have a medic student going through medic school or somebody going through a promotional test, we're just like beating them over the head with blueberries. And that can be frozen. Get the frozen ones and put them into a smoothie so they don't go all moldy in your fridge. And then the last thing, omega-3s. So fatty fish, seafood, some like nuts and like chia seeds, flax seeds, that kind of thing. Your brain, your membranes have DHA kind of studded throughout. So an omega-3 studded throughout. So eating things that are high in omega-3s can help with brain health as well.
The fiber in a pinch, things like Metamucil. Does that
thing? Yes, let's just shotgun Metamucil at lineup and call it a day. Yeah.
I'll tell you what, I got guys who look forward to it at work.
I'm telling you, that's why I brought it up, man. Because yes, it's a thing. That's why I'm bringing it up.
And there's always 3 tubs of sour cream in every fridge and firehouse in the United States.
Yeah,
with a spoon in it, at least one of them.
There's a giant orange bucket of Metamucil and a big thing from Costco Tums. Every firehouse, I don't care what maker model.
Yes,
it is.
Yes,
we won't change our eating habits so we can reduce our Tums usage. Yeah, that wouldn't make sense. That would make too much sense. Yeah, but also caffeine lowers the pressure of the lower esophageal sphincter, so that couldn't possibly impact our reflux. Anyway, so Metamucil, it's a tool. So it's psyllium husk fiber. It can actually, like I said, help bind to excess cholesterol, like silly putty. So you know how silly putty would like stick onto the newspaper and peel things off, rolls through your arteries, picking up excess LDL cholesterol and pushes it out through your poop. So Metamucil, it's a tool, but here's the thing. What are you not getting with Metamucil? The antioxidants, the water, well, technically the water, but the other things that come with the fruit and vegetable. So anytime someone, if they choose to log, like in MyFitnessPal or like whatever, then yeah, sure. Like we can do the Metamucil, but I don't count it towards your goals because I'm mean.
No, that's okay. That's fair. And for the picky eaters who don't necessarily get to the omega-3s, is having that omega-3 supplement just as good as getting it from right from the fish?
So yes, you can. The American Heart Association says about 1 gram of DHA and EPA per day can be beneficial. So I'm just clarifying, when I say 1 gram, you want to look at the back of the label and see that 1,000 milligrams or 1 gram is coming directly from DHA and EPA instead of just like 1 gram of fish oil, 1 milligram of the total fish oil, because that's not all EPA DHA. So yes, if you're a picky eater, you certainly can do that. If you get fish burps, the trick is to put it in the refrigerator. You can technically, you're supposed to put it in the freezer, but I won't remember it if it's in the freezer. So I put it next to the coffee creamer, and guess who won't forget it if it's next to that? So yes, you certainly could supplement with it, but also keep in mind, if we can get it, salmon, we just need about I think it's 4 to 8 ounces of salmon per week. So that's like 1 or 2 meals per week, to get the omega-3s that you need. But also keep in mind, salmon comes with protein. Salmon comes with other antioxidants like astaxanthin, which is a powerful antioxidant for reducing DNA damage. So, supplementation has its place, but also keep in mind, you're not getting a whole lot of other stuff when we don't get it through food.
Let's get into some more practical takeaways. You've been really great on things that we can actually take home and consume as first responders. But what is one small change that any first responder can do today to feel better tomorrow?
Yeah, I think it always comes back to the dang applesauce pouches for me. And the only reason I say that is it's just like the simplest fix that I have tons of testimonials and little comments on Instagram. Like, I tried that stupid applesauce pouch thing. It works. Basically, what I'm talking about is using applesauce before workouts or active trainings and drills, specifically if you feel like your workouts haven't been hitting the way they used to anymore. So what I mean by that is a lot of people are doing these fasted workouts, either because they're worried about stomach issues or some dude on TikTok told them they would burn more fat on a fasted workout. So when you look at the research, we actually find that people burn just as much fat on a fasted workout as a fed workout, because in the fed workout, they can push harder. So what I see is a first responder coming to me and saying, hey, I've been struggling to hit my workouts lately. Like, the weights are feeling heavier halfway through. It feels like I'm running through sludge. Like, they're hitting these walls. And all of us have done that in a workout or a training or something like that. You just don't feel like you have any more gas in the tank for what is normal for you. And when we add an applesauce pouch, like 10, 15 minutes before or between the weight training session and the cardio session, if they're doing 2 of those, then we see a substantial improvement in their workouts. And I've actually gotten some of them off of pre-workout caffeine, like pre-workout powders, which sounds like witchcraft.
How long before the workout would you say to take that pouch to get the maximum effect of it for that workout?
I would say about 15 minutes, before, but most of the time I know for me, like I'm just like rolling right into the workout because life. And so I'm just like hitting that applesauce pouch, rolling right into my warm up because we don't skip the warm up. Because why don't we skip the warm up? Because your shoulders hurt and you're old.
Correct.
Yes. Talking to two guys over 40. You don't have to sell us.
Yeah, you don't have to sell us on it.
I'm going to be honest. It's once you get after 25, you're too old. You can't do the no warm up anymore and they'll come to me and they'll be like, my shoulder hurts when I bench. Yeah, no crap. You rolled right into benching your like max weight or something like that. And you're wondering why your shoulder has an owie. So even a 5-minute warm up can really make a difference, not only with the mental transition from whatever you were doing into working out, but also with warming the body up and having less aches and pains and that kind of stuff. But the applesauce pouch, so what people don't realize is that caffeine reduces the feeling of fatigue, but it does not provide energy in the literal sense of carbohydrates. So calories that your body can convert to ATP to power through your workout, to power your muscles. So if I give someone an applesauce pouch, it doesn't bother their stomach. They're super portable. You can keep them in a bag. And a lot of times, if you're a parent, you already have them at your house. And then also, if you are like adjuncting at the academy, you're doing a burn day. And usually with our evolutions, they're typically like 20 minutes. So like you're doing one every hour with the recruits. You should be hitting an applesauce pouch every hour on the hour. Why? Because I'm sure a ton of you leave that academy with a headache, feeling like garbage. You go eat everything that's not tied down. That it'll give you more energy while you're actually doing the work. So a lot of first responders, they can wrap their heads around, okay, I need to eat before a workout. I need to replace carbs during a workout, but they don't translate that over to when they're doing active trainings and drills. They just like power through the drill because fire.
Well, you don't think about putting food in that circumstance at all.
No.
You know what I love most about this advice is that you just gave me a very cheap solution. You're not saying go buy whatever brand thing at $3 a pack. I mean, you can get a 12 pack.
The Costco, it's like 12 for 15. I can't even do math. I think it's 30 actually. And also, if you're on the fire ground, guess what's self-contained? Applesauce. So there's no worry about like contamination. You're not actually touching the food with your dirty hands, that kind of stuff. We have them on our canteens now at Fairfax. So for departments who don't have canteens, like this is the snack wagon that the volunteers bring to bigger alarms. Yeah, the snack wagons have applesauce pouches. We now do liquid IV, so an oral rehydration solution. We also have Gatorade available, but we have something that's a little bit more concentrated to help with rehydration. So a lot of people so protein, fat, and fiber, they slow digestion. This is good when you're sitting on your butt in the day room. This is not, you don't want your digestion slowed when you're about to, run into a burning building. You want your remember, rest and digest, and then that sympathetic nervous system is not trying to digest. So, the simpler carbs, things that aren't high in fiber, that are really easy, quick, and digestible, and then also portable, that gives someone that small, quick win. They're like, oh, she actually knows what she's talking about. So one other thing that you should have in that pack is an oral rehydration solution. So are you guys familiar with what an oral rehydration solution is?
We love the element.
That's not an ORS.
Okay, what's an ORS? I'm confused then. I just assumed you meant like a hydration packet like they're selling everywhere.
Yes, I love that you said that because now I can tell you exactly why not element. It's not. Okay, roll back the tape. So element is an electrolyte replacement. It works. I'm not saying it doesn't work. It does help rehydrate, but it's not the gold standard for rehydration. And I'm sorry, I have to go with the gold standard for first responders because time is an issue. And also, you don't want to do the paperwork for getting transported. And you don't want to get yelled at by your spouse for passing out because they will beat you. Cut that part out. But in any case, an oral rehydration solution is, they were developed for the cholera epidemic where they didn't have access to IV fluids in the quantities necessary to help save people from dehydration-related illnesses. So this is obviously an oral product that has about somewhere between 500 and 800 milligrams of sodium. So double the sodium of sports drink and half the sugar. So about 10, 15 grams of sugar. Everybody wants to go sugar-free because sugar-free means healthy, right? Not in this instance. So having a little bit of sugar available, not only does the sodium help replace, the losses, you use the electrolytes when you lose the electrolytes, you use them when you lose them, but it also having that little bit of sugar gives you access to the sodium glucose co-transporter. So when glucose is available, it can bind to the transporter, sodium can then bind, and water can follow. So you gain an entry point on the cell. So people rehydrate 2 to 3 times as fast with sugar-containing products. So I see a lot of departments buying into Fire Salt, Element, Relight. And yes, it's replacing the electrolytes, which the losses are significant on the fire ground. However, it is not equal to IV fluids in case of mild to moderate dehydration, like an ORS is. So oral rehydration solution products are things like Drip Drop, Liquid IV, or Fluid Tactical ORS. And they are a little bit more expensive, but also equal to IV therapy in mild to moderate dehydration. Element and Fire Salt are not equal to IV therapy based on the evidence that I've seen. Large department purchases need to be ORS. Personal purchases, you're on paleo, you're keto, you're a special diet, you don't want to do sugar, it's a personal thing, totally go for it. But like I said, based on the current level of evidence, I just don't see those products being the main purchase, not only for personal, but for also departmental use. And then when you go to these websites, they're like, well, sugar is causing diabetes. Sugar from Liquid IV is not giving the fire service diabetes. Wait.
So you've provided a lot of information today, and we hope to have you back. But where can first responders go to find more of your content, your resources, and this great practical advice that you have?
Yeah, so I am on Instagram and LinkedIn at rescue.rd. And so I post 6 times a week on first responder nutrition tips, tactics, that kind of thing. And then I have a free recipe book on my website, rescuerd.com. $5 to $6 a head, ships of 6, 10, and 14, half a pound of protein per person. About I want to say at least 15 recipes that are geared towards those station standards that I've seen relatively nationwide. I do have a recipe book that I'm currently working on as well for fire engineering. So Fueling Fire should hopefully be coming out 2026, 2027-ish.
Awesome.
And you have a podcast that you speak on in fire engineering.
Yes. Firefighter Nation, Fueling Fire. So it's all under one, I guess, feed. But if you look up Fueling Fire podcast, you can see my episodes.
We're happy to have you here today. Thank you for coming.
Thanks for having me.
Yes, we appreciate you very much, Megan, and I hope you have a great day.
Have a good one.
Thank you for listening to the Minds on the Frontline podcast. We have more great content coming out soon. Please check us out on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, X, and LinkedIn. And make sure to like and subscribe to all Minds on the Frontline podcast social media channels. Thank you, and have a great day.